Everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with all of you my ranking of my cream bronzer collection. So cream bronzer is actually a product that for the longest time I didn't like. I mean, overall, I still kind of prefer powder bronzers typically, but I feel like cream products have in general really been very viral lately, and so I have ended up accumulating a lot of the popular cream bronzers. And I have to say, recently, since the summer has hit, I actually have been using cream bronzer a lot. And so I thought this would be a fun opportunity to run through my collection with you guys, share with you my overall ranking and impressions, given that I have used all of these bronzers for quite some time. So if you're interested in learning more about cream bronzer formulas, then just stick around. So I have 7 formulas to talk about today. So starting with 7th place is the Fenty Beauty Match Sticks. I have this in the shade 02 Suede. And this was kind of one of the OG formulas in terms of cream bronzer. I feel like when Fenty Beauty first came out with this, it was one of the very few stick cream bronzers on the market. For me, this is actually the newest cream bronzer to my collection. I got this recently in an Ipsy bag, and so this doesn't quite have the same nostalgia factor for me that it probably has for many other folks. Overall, I would say this is a pretty solid formula. None of the bronzers I'm talking about today are ones that I dislike. But the reason this is coming at the bottom of the list is just because it's a lot stiffer than the other cream formulas in this ranking. I find that I have to use quite a bit of pressure with my brush in order to blend this out. So for me, when I use this, it's a lot better if I use it with a very emollient foundation. And so in the footage that I'm showing right now, I actually use my Tom Ford foundation stick, which is very emollient. So it blends out better on top of that foundation than on top of a lot of my other foundations. But especially if I'm using a foundation that's a little bit more natural to matte, I find that this can be kind of tricky to blend out. And for me, the main attraction of cream bronzers is that they are really easy to blend out. And unlike powder bronzers, they tend to not have as many issues of patchiness. So for me, I just wish this formula were a little bit more emollient. And also this shade for me is nice, but not great, I would say. It's a little bit orangey on my skin tone, so it's not a shade that I particularly like to go for. In 6th place, I have my Yensa Sunlit Glow Silk Bronzing Base. So this is a fairly light cream bronzer, definitely the lightest shade of all of the cream bronzers I'm going to show you guys today. And that's partially why it's ending up where it is in the rankings. I mean, mostly I'm looking at formula, but for this one, it is just a little bit light for my skin tone. Still really nice. I think the undertone is quite pretty, and it does still add some nice bronziness to the skin. But overall, it's not as good for me color-wise as the rest of the options. In terms of the formulation, I do find that this blends out super easily, is very easy to use. This is definitely a very emollient formula. It has a slight silicone sensation on the skin, and so that gives it a little bit more of a slippy sensation in comparison to some of the others. It definitely blends out better than the Fenty, but it really doesn't stand out that much in my collection, so that's why it's ranking as 6th. Next, we have the ABH Cream Bronzer in Amber. So I actually really like this formula. It works really well, very creamy, very easy to blend out on the skin, very emollient. As you can see, it has quite a bit of a radiant finish or creamy finish when you first apply it especially. This shade is quite good for me if I want to lean into more ochre undertones, especially for warmer toned looks. It's not my overall favorite shade, but it definitely works a lot better on my skin tone than the Yensa bronzer. It's also super easy to blend out, in part because it is so creamy. Now, the one thing I don't like about this product is that because it is so emollient and kind of stays sort of creamy and wet on your skin for a while, my hair does get stuck in this a lot. And personally for me, I do prefer my bronzer to sort of set down, even if I don't powder it, for it to at least not be having all of my baby hair stick in it. And that's for me part of why I typically prefer powders over creams. So for this, even though I really like the finish, and I do go for this if I want a glowier, dewier look, I just don't like that my hair gets stuck in it. Next, in 4th place, we have the M Cosmetics So Soft Cream Bronzer Stick. I have this in the lightest shade Terra, and this is definitely by far the coolest toned formula in my collection. As you can see, it looks super gray next to the other shades. So this one is truly a contour rather than a bronzer. And I will say for most looks and on a daily basis, this is a little bit too cool toned for me. It can be a little bit unflattering in just how gray it is. But I do really love this on days when I'm doing a very cool toned look, or in the winter months where I am a bit more pale. If you're really not feeling kind of those bronzy vibes, but you just want a more chiseled look, then this is a really perfect shade. Especially recently, I've been really enjoying going in with the Natasha Denona Glam palette, and I feel like this sort of color is really good for matching those very cool toned neutral looks. In terms of the formulation, this is kind of like a hybrid between the previous two in that it has a bit of that slippy, silicone texture that the Yensa does, but it also has a bit more of that creamy emollient finish that the ABH does. You can maybe see that a little bit in the swatch, that there is a little bit of shine. Now for me, I don't have as many problems with my hair sticking to this product just because since it is so pigmented and also so gray toned, I usually only use a very light hand when I'm going into this product, and so as a result there just isn't as much for my hair to stick to. That said, this is ranking above the ABH simply because it is slightly less sticky, and also this shade is just really unique in my collection and plays a special role. So now for the top 3 cream bronzers. So number 3 is the Huda Beauty Tantour. I have this in shade Light, and this is sort of an oldie but goodie. It's been around for quite a while and is an OG favorite for many folks in the makeup community. This is the first shade of the bunch, and in general, I guess the top 3 are all shades I actually really like on my skin tone, so that's definitely part of why they're ranking where they are. So with the Tantour, other than the fact that the shade is just a lot more flattering on my skin, I would also say there's really nothing I dislike about this formula. It's super easy to use, very blendable, doesn't have any issues with kind of sticking to the skin, but it also does dry down a lot more than any of these previous formulas, and so I don't have that issue of my face kind of feeling sticky throughout the day. I find that the shade is also just really good for the kind of bronzer that I usually like to do. I typically don't like going into a separate contour and bronzer, and because my skin is already kind of warm toned, I usually don't feel a strong need to bronze separately or have a really kind of warm bronzer. And so I think this sort of shade that has a little bit more reddishness to it, maybe a tiny bit of gray, really sits at that happy medium of not so gray like the M Cosmetics that can only be used as a contour, but not as warm as the ABH or Yensa, such that it can only be used as bronzer. If I had to nitpick, I would say the only thing I don't 100% love about this formula is that I do have to be a little bit more careful with picking up this product in comparison to the top 2. Part of that is the format. It's in this pot design, and so I feel like my brush tends to pick up a bit more of it versus for my top 2 bronzers. Also, compared to my number 1 bronzer, this is a lot more emollient, and so that means just a lot more product does tend to pick up on my brush when I dab it directly in this. So that's the one thing I'm not 100% a fan of with this. It's more kind of the application process. I feel like I have to be a little bit more careful when I'm using this. In second place, we have the LYS bronzer. I have this in the shade Harmony. And so this is actually the bronzer that inspired me to do today's video. So I got this also from Ipsy not that long ago, and I was curious about this for a while because I feel like a lot of people have raved about this bronzing stick, but because, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not a huge cream bronzer person, I never really went out and picked this up, even though I do really love LYS as a brand and actually have their foundation on today. I also do actually have Harmony in the powder form as well, and I do enjoy their powder formulation too. But as a result, I didn't really feel a strong need to pick up this version, but I quickly really fell in love with this, and I feel like this cream bronzer formula is actually the one that really encouraged me to start using cream bronzers a lot throughout this summer. Basically, I got this, started using this all the time, really appreciated just how easy it was to blend out and how quick it made my makeup routine. And so that kind of made me feel like I wanted to use my other cream bronzers more as well, and that sort of led to this video. In particular, I don't actually think I've actually shown you guys this bronzer on camera, even though I've been using it so much. So basically, this video is all kind of an excuse to talk about this formula. So what's so great about the LYS formula is, for one, the color is great. So as you can see, it's quite similar to the Huda, maybe just a little bit more reddish, a little bit more neutral, which I prefer. So this is also a really great Brontour color for me. And then in terms of the formula, for me, this is just one of the easiest ones to blend out. I feel like it's the perfect creaminess where it's creamy enough that it blends out super easily. You don't have to use a lot of force to blend it out, but then it's also not so creamy that it kind of gets everywhere or it's sticky or anything like that. And I think it also sets pretty nicely as well. I actually have it on this side of my face today. It looks really nice if you don't set it with powder. It also looks great if you set it with powder. And even though the shade looks kind of intimidating, and indeed if you use the powder version, I feel like Harmony can sometimes come across a little strong on my light medium skin tone. But in the cream formula, it just blends out really easily. And so unlike the Tantour from Huda Beauty, I feel like I never worry about over applying this. And also I find that for most stick products, it's just so much more foolproof to apply them first to your hand and then put them on the cheeks. And that for me is a major pet peeve that I have with most stick cream bronzers or blushes, because I feel like when I actually draw it on the face, it doesn't really blend out that easily. And the major exception is this guy over here. So when I use the Fenty, when I use the M Cosmetics, I feel like it's a lot better for me to first apply it to the back of my hand. But with this guy, I feel like I can just apply it directly to the face. I never have any issues there with the blending leading my foundation to pick up or with the product getting patchy. And so that's really exciting to me because I do like the convenience of the stick format, being able to just kind of draw this on and not having to sort of hold onto a pot. It's a very minor difference, but I feel like it still makes a difference in terms of your ability to just precisely apply the product. And so that's why I really love this. And honestly, this and number one, I think I could go back and forth between because they're just very different formulas, but I love them both a lot. Finally, in first place, we have the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Sun-Kissed Glow Bronzer. And I have this in shade 2 medium. So this is, for me, a really revolutionary product. This is the first cream bronzer that I actually really enjoyed. So first off, in terms of the shade, again, you can see it's relatively similar to the past two. This one maybe just has a tiny bit more yellow to it than the previous one, but very, very similar. So this shade I find is very flattering for me as well. What I love about this product, and for me what was really game-changing about it, is this is the first cream bronzer that I've tried that really has more of a powder finish. And so after you apply it and sort of buff it out on the skin, it really looks like you just had a really nice powder bronzer that just blended seamlessly. It doesn't leave sort of like a shiny emollient finish. And it's also really easy to build up. I think sometimes with creams, if you start applying too many layers, you just are removing the previous layers. But because this has more of a powder effect, it's really easy to build it on top of itself or on top of other cream bronzers. And in fact, in the demo that I'm showing right now, I'm putting it on top of the Yensa bronzer on one side and on top of the LYS on the other side. And it's just so easy to layer it. I also love that even though it is in this sort of compact, it's not so easy to pick up that you end up accidentally picking too much up and just putting a streak on your face. I think it's quite easy to control the pickup on this because it's a little bit more firmly pressed in comparison to some of the other pot bronzers. And so if you're someone like me that really loves the control that you get with powder bronzers and the finish, then I would highly recommend checking out this product because it basically gives you both of those effects, but in a very easy to apply form where you don't have to worry as much about patchiness or interaction with your other products. I feel like this is just very, very easy to use. You really don't have to think about it that much. So that's it in terms of my cream bronzer ranking. Before I wrap this up, I also just wanted to give a shout out to my BK Beauty 111 brush. This is my current favorite brush for blending out cream bronzer. For a long time, it was the BK Beauty 107 brush, which is extremely similar to this. This one is just a tiny bit denser than that one. And so as a result, I enjoy it a little bit more because it just gives me a tiny bit more control. But I really love this, and this is the brush that I used, I think, to apply all of the cream bronzers in the demos in this video. It's a really perfect size and shape in order to get that chiseled effect, but still kind of blown out. It makes really quick work of any of these products. And also these synthetic hairs from BK Beauty are just really easy to clean. And for me, at least, whenever I use cream or liquid products, I always like to clean my brushes immediately afterward. So as a result, I really love this and would highly vouch for this as well. So that's it for today's video. I would love to hear in the comments what you guys think about any of these formulas, or if you have another favorite cream bronzer, please let me know. I am trying not to accumulate too many more cream, liquid, blushes, or bronzers because they do go bad and I do have a lot of them. But I am still curious about your guys' thoughts about the other products on the market. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in seeing a version of this video with blush. I think I have at this point like 30 cream/liquid blushes, even though, again, I am more of a powder fan than a cream or liquid fan, but somehow here we are. So let me know if you guys would be interested in that. I would probably have to think a lot more about how to make it not like an hour-long video. But if you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!